What's good? What's good? What's good? We are back with another live stream. We are here with Matic Mondays. And if this is your first time checking us out, we are glad that you're here. We talk about everything digital nomad, remote working, travel, transitioning your skills if you're trying to get into IT or just remote working. We are here for you, and we package it all up and have it have a good time. And so if this is your returning time, we are back. We are back. Definitely like and subscribe. Share the video. You got a few minutes to share the video, get these gems. We always have a good show where you can come away with something. So I have my wonderful co-host, Tiffany Sports and Heels. What's good, Tiffany?
What's good, y'all? How y'all doing tonight? Happy Women's History Month. Happy International Women's Week. Yay!
Yes, for the ladies.
Girls.
For the ladies. Oh, yes.
Aren't you glad you have a woman co-host on your show on Manic Mondays?
Yes. Gives balance.
Got our point of view, got our perspective, inject some of this estrogen in this male-dominated, testosterone-filled podcast world.
Yes, it is a lot of guys with microphones out here.
Yeah, a lot of hard legs with hard voices. Yes.
Yes, we come to give a little balance to the space.
Yeah, balance.
And yes, and speaking of adding another young lady to the live stream tonight, we have V. She's coming all the way from the UK. Woo! Yes. Give it up. Come on, studio audience. All right.
Applause. Round of applause.
Yes. So, yes, definitely. We are glad to have V. I'm gonna tell you, with V, is Vishana, and actually has her content is Bougie Nomad. We'll get into the title of that very soon, because that was one thing that I was trying to understand where she got the name from, which I could probably understand, but don't want to assume. But I met her on Instagram, and I said, wow, this is she has some pretty good content. She was taking the best pictures I have ever seen on Instagram, and she has inspired me actually to start taking more pictures, because I'm more of a video person. Mm-hmm. And so like her pictures be spot on, and I'm like, dang, what kind of camera she using? Like, it's really, really nice. I mean, she has like 20 of them up at a time on her stories, and I just watched through all of them. Like, such good. I have a great eye for content. I will say that. So yes, introduce yourself to the people, Miss Bougie Nomad.
Okay, well, my name is Vishana, and yes, my moniker is Bougie Nomad. I am retired Army, and back in we'll say July 2022, I decided to chuck it all in. I retired initially from the military in 2016, went back to work in 2018, and then after 2020, I decided life is too short. 2022, I quit that job and went back into retirement. November 2022, I sold everything, and what I couldn't sell, I put in a storage unit in Virginia, and me and my dog Duchess hit the road and became nomads. And so initially we were driving around the United States doing house sits. I was stacking coins and seeing the United States, and also I just couldn't leave because she was too old. I couldn't travel with her at her age, because at the time that we both became nomadic, she was 16 and a half. And so she passed away this past June at 17 and a half. Wow. Yeah, she had a nice long life. And so after she passed away, I was able to take the nomad thing international. And so basically I go to a different country or a different region every month. And so I'm just living my life in another country every month.
Living my life like it's gold and living my life. We need that. And we need some music inject. I know YouTube has those rules, but I can sing it without copyright infringement.
Yes, yes. And let's first thank you for your service. We
Absolutely.
definitely
Thank you.
appreciate that. Your sacrifice. Um, how long were you in the army?
20 years, 3 months, 19 days.
Wow, you did
Wow.
the 20. Ooh, ooh, that's good. That's good. I keep saying this constantly that it's one thing that I do regret in life was not going into the army because every time I see somebody traveling and I'm like, oh, what you do online? You do remote work? You should come. Oh, I, I was in the army. I was in the Navy. I was in the Air Force. I'm like, oh man, like I know it's just set, and you know, it's just set, so you can just travel with ease. So you know,
Yeah.
it pays back. It pays back all your hard work and sacrifice there. Yes. So you know, and one thing that you sent to me, which is actually the content, the subject of this live stream. We were talking about expats and immigrants. You sent me a very interesting Facebook reel, and I will play that shortly about being an expat. Are you really an immigrant? You know, we have the immigrant thing going on now that is at the on every conversation, every TV, every
Every country doesn't
in
matter. It's a
every
topic of
country,
discussion.
the election, that's like one of the main talking points. It's up and coming election, so it's everybody's talking about it. So I was like, we're gonna talk about it a little. We talked about it one time before, more of a digital nomad and immigrant, but we want to kind of tie the expat point to it because it's actually more aligned with expat because digital nomads, they're gonna sometimes leave that other country. They may pop to another country. They're hopping around, but immigrants are here to stay, and expats are traditionally here to stay too, as well. So, so yeah. So let me play that video. Actually, it was on Facebook. Share.
Immigrant. You're someone who is fleeing your country to find a better.
Let me start it over. I think it was playing in the background.
Just learn what an expat is. Y'all don't feel goofy saying stuff like that. If you don't know, there are folks who like leave the states to live somewhere like Europe and work abroad because times is really tough out here, and that's called being an expat. But like, there's already phrases for that. You immigrant. You're someone who is fleeing your country to find a better quality of life in a different country. Ultimately, you're going to work in that country to bring American money to you in that new country, like a migrant worker. No, I ain't a migrant. I'm an expat. Shut up.
Oh no, that's different. It's not the same. I'm an expat. I'm an expat.
Do y'all understand how it sounds when people say stuff like that? No, I'm not an immigrant. You know, I'm not like a Mexican. You know, it's totally different. I ain't even knocking it. I fully understand. Times are really, really tough in America right now. But let's keep it a stack. Being in Buck, you are a refugee. I do think it's funny how like half of the country is like the problem is all these migrants, and the other half of the country is like, I think I need to be a migrant. I just learned what an expat is. Y'all don't.
Yes, yes. Very interesting. You sent me something as well too with the I think because you're in what part of the UK you're in V?
Right now, I'm in Keswick. I'm in the North Lakes district.
Okay. You sent me something as well too. I didn't capture that though, but about the monument I think you went to that you saw.
Oh yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I can't
So
recall.
I went to a museum when I was in York, and there was a. Okay, so we know this is funny. So we know that South Africa was colonized by the British, and there was a it was a railway museum, and there was a plaque in the railway museum with the rail car, and basically they called the people who moved to South Africa. They referred to them as immigrants, and I just thought that it was funny because the time period that they were talking about in the museum, I'm like, this is called colonization, not immigration. So I did think that it was comical that they used the term immigrant, but I also thought that it was also telling that they did not use the term expat.
That's interesting because I know Tiffany and I spoke about that at length the other night. Because essentially, expat is an immigrant, really. I mean, in the definition, if you look at context. But go ahead, Tiffany.
Well, the expat was a term coined by a British man in 1962 by a British poet named D.J. Enright. And the term was used, now you can Google, so Google's free. The term was used mostly to refer to Brits who were sent by their employees to British colonies for business purposes. So it already has a connotation attached to it, right? That it's only used by a European. This is 1962, right? So a European coined a phrase to refer to other Europeans who were going to British colonies to colonize. Let's be clear, to colonize and work. To work on the colonization. So that's why expat was created.
Okay.
So the term immigrant, which is well before 1962, right, is the term used for others who were coming into these, European countries. They were giving them the term immigrants. But we can't be immigrants. So let's be expats because we're only going there to our colonies to work. We're not immigrating there.
Right.
So we've already got, if you listen to the keywords, we've already got she just talked about how they use those terms in that museum. And if you've been to any museums in Europe, that is very common. Those little explanations that hide little details. I went to I was in London and I went to see the stolen jewels, aka the crown jewels, and the explanations on how they've received some of those jewels, specifically the one the Queen wears in the big one that came from India. They tell a story about how it was donated by this Indian little boy to the British royalty, and we know that's not what happened. But yeah, so we've got an explanation on why they're using that term already.
Right. And there's actually a lot of conversation behind, which I didn't really think that there was a lot of conversation behind it, but it's a lot. Somebody's definition here. It says an expat or expatriate is simply defined as a person who lives outside their native country. Similarly, an immigrant is a person who comes to live permanently in a foreign country. Only one distinction is made here. Immigrants intend to stay in their new country indefinitely. Whether expats do or do not is unclear. So I guess like with immigrants, you have to, most immigrants, let's say in America, they seek asylum. Most of them come here to be asylum seekers. So with being an asylum seeker means that you cannot go back to your native country, if I'm correct. I'm not so clear on this. I'm not an immigration specialist.
I think with asylum, you're fleeing persecution. So you can't go back to your country for fear of death.
But you could go to another country though, right?
Right.
Yeah. Once you get U.S. citizenship, they call that the golden ticket. You can pretty much go anywhere after that.
Yeah. It's not really. Japan is the golden ticket. Japan
that's
is
true.
actually.
That's true.
Yeah. Japan has they've got the golden ticket actually.
Yeah, you can go to, because there's a lot of countries you can't do that in the U.S. I mean, you can't be an American and go to. Japan has the most unrestricted passport globally. Right. Yeah, so you're right. Well, it's one of, let's put it, it's in the top 10 of golden tickets.
Right. Germany is number 3. I forgot who number 2 was.
I think it was like Singapore or something like that.
Oh, it could be. Could be.
Somewhere else in Asia. It wasn't a Western country.
Yeah.
Mm.
The people that ain't raising Cain around the world.
Right, right. So how do y'all feel about the immigration status in the States? Do y'all feel like it's like, and I don't want to get into politics, but some people are saying it's not, the immigrants here or that are coming here will not impact citizens of the United States, but I feel like it could eventually, maybe not now, but eventually. Because it's a lot that you have to take in consideration for as economics, inflation that's already high, housing these immigrants. It's a lot that you have to take in consideration. I mean, they maybe not the job status because some of them don't speak a certain language. It's a lot. It's a lot to think on.
Well, I'll say personally, I mean, historically, there's always been some sort of issue with immigration. We can go back to the Chinese Exclusionary Acts, where we needed all these people to come over to our country so they can help us build the country. And then once they've helped us build the country, well, now we don't want them anymore. And we come up with different excuses to say why they need to leave. So what we're experiencing today is not something that's new. It's just, it's just the record on repeat. Because, the number one saying is always, oh, they're coming over and stealing all the jobs. I'm sorry, they're not taking jobs that we are qualified for, and they're not taking jobs that we want. And when I say that we're not qualified for, there's a whole lot of Indian doctors in the United States. I'm not qualified to be a doctor. They didn't take a job from me. And there's a whole lot of migrant workers that are like picking apples. I'm not picking nobody's apple, so they didn't take a job from me.
Right. I was just going to say that too, because, immigrants were picking apples or strawberries or whatever, watermelons. If they were not in it, but it's still like it's almost like we're kind of exploiting their labor because they do some of them get paid on the table. Some of them get paid very, the lowest minimum wage that they can get. That's, for that actual state or whatever. Because our apples, oranges, $1.99, $2.99 a pound, whatever. But if you had common, regular, everyday people, that wanted $10 an hour, $15 an hour, your apple's gonna be like $5 for an apple,
Exactly.
So it's a lot to think about once you draw the line in the sand, saying no, I don't want them here. You have to be understanding of what comes with that no that you're saying. Like a lot of things will change if you say no.
Right.
You're benefiting a lot. You're benefiting a lot off of it.
My opinion, Adrian, we talked about this, so you know where I'm going to go. My opinion is there's plenty of money in this capitalistic society to go around. However, because we have corporations who are hoarding huge amounts of wealth, therefore taking it away from all the class people that are below the 1%ers, everyone is fighting for what's theirs. So it doesn't matter if it's a job, it doesn't matter if it's resources, it doesn't matter if it's food, it doesn't matter what it is. There's always going to be an us and them mentality when you have a society that's set up to where some hoard wealth and others have to trickle down and get whatever they can get. So therefore, there wouldn't be this infighting. If there was a share of wealth or just at least livable wages, livable, free healthcare, all of those kind of things that kind of support a system that supports some immigrants coming and some not. Because let's be clear, immigrants are coming from European countries as well. They're not just coming from Mexico and Honduras. They're coming from Canada. They're coming from Europe. They're coming from all over. So this idea that we're going to accept some, but not others, use some, exploit some, but not give them power to vote and not allow them to make decisions about how we're using their income. All of those things are all a result of corporations and capitalism. So, I mean, my personal opinion is if you're going to allow some, you have to allow all. And if you don't have the systems to support everyone who comes, then you don't have the systems to support anyone who comes. And that means you don't have the system in support for the people who are already living here. And that's because you're allowing corporations and others to hoard wealth. Don't hoard wealth. There's plenty to share. There's no reason why we have 14 billionaires from the United States. There's no reason. It's absolutely no reason whatsoever, because the only way to be a billionaire is to be unethical. You have to exploit someone to become a billionaire. Nobody's waking up with $1 billion. You know, nobody's doing that. So I think we need to be, I'm going to always keep it real. For me, my perspective is share the wealth. And then we won't have these little stupid crabs in a barrel debates about who's an expat and who's an immigrant, because it wouldn't matter, because everybody's getting access to the same resources. Again, when you add on into that, you add in racism into that. The only reason why we're having this conversation again is because some people don't want to be called an immigrant, because immigrant has a negative connotation to it. Yep. It doesn't matter what country you go to in the world. If someone thinks you're an immigrant or you're being called an immigrant, it has a negative connotation. Third thing, expat is typically not used for people who look like us. Let's just be honest. It's not a term. We use it within ourselves. We call us, we've adapted that and saying that, oh, I'm not an immigrant, I'm an expat. Again, because typically people that look like us are referred to as immigrant. It doesn't matter how you come. It doesn't matter if you're coming as a digital nomad. It doesn't matter if you're coming as a wanderer. It doesn't matter if you're coming as an educator. It doesn't matter why you're coming. You are considered an immigrant. Only the people who don't look like us have been considered expats. We had a European created. We have a European reason for using it. It's going to be a more positive connotation to it than it would be the term immigrant.
Right. And that made me think about another conversation we had, V, with you said a friend of yours was in England.
Yes.
They were I think it was a discount, if I can recall. It was a discount that they were trying to get. And
no. Okay, yeah. So this is my friend. Okay, first of all, let me go back a little bit. First, I want to say that the only people that I hear using the term expat are Americans. And as a matter of fact, I spoke with a British person today, and she specifically used the word immigrant. She did not use the word expat, and she was speaking to her about herself. So we as Americans are the only people I ever hear using the term expat. So what happened is I have a friend who lives in Korea. And she has an apartment in Korea. She has set up her life in Korea. And we were at a market, and she was trying to get a discount. And she was using local language trying to get a discount, you know. And the guy just looked at her and he said, "You are a foreigner." And I about fell out laughing, because she had to laugh too, because she knew what she was doing, and he called her out on it. But the funny thing is, I tried her same technique a couple of days later, and I got the discount.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess it was a case-by-case basis there.
Well, it was a different person. And also the person that she was using it on had worked for the U.S. military at one point. And so he, he was a little bit more flip with it.
Yeah, he peeped game. He peeped game. Like, yeah, nah.
Exactly. But the fact that he was like, he called her a foreigner, like, yeah, you're a foreigner in this country. Yeah. And so it was funny to me.
Yeah. And that's more actually, as I've traveled and talked to people, that's the term I've never been called an immigrant. Right. But I have been called a foreigner. And I think that, that's just a comment. It doesn't have any connotation to it.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. And so they feel more safe to call you a foreigner, because they know you won't argue that, right? Unless you are native to that country and can argue like, hey, I was born here. Then it's different.
And I don't even think it's a safety thing. I think it's just a vocabulary thing.
Agreed.
Like, I don't know why he didn't refer to her as an immigrant. Maybe because he didn't know her living situation.
Right.
In his mind is like, you are not of this country. You were not born of this country. You are a foreigner. He didn't call her an illegal alien.
Right.
That only happens in the U.S. You're an illegal alien.
Exactly. And hear that term, I'm like, did somebody come from outer space?
Yeah, yeah, and that again, that shows you how the West, because Canadians do it too. They'll call you an immigrant, but it's never said in a lovingly inviting way, right? Someone calling you an immigrant, if they're saying they're saying it to disparage you. They're saying it to humble you, right? Or remind you of where they see you, the status that they see you, right? So that's why it has these negative connotations to it. Where and you're right, nobody outside the U.S. says I'm an expat from Australia. They just says I'm Australian.
Right.
I'm an expat, and living in Colombia. They just say I'm living in Colombia. I'm an American living in Colombia. So I mean, that's how it should go, right?
Right.
And that's why our racism is kind of different than what people experience outside of the U.S. because ours is such ingrained in the historic and the stereotypical, like how everything is how racism is portrayed here. People say our racism, theirs is more overt. No, theirs is just our language is different.
Right.
The racism here, when it comes to language, is meant to demean you, right?
Right.
It's meant to humble you. It's meant to demoralize you. It's not meant to identify you, right? We're past that. We use those terms we attach things to those terms, those identifying terms. So it's just meant to be, immigrant is meant to be just an identifier of how you got into originated in the United States. You're an immigrant or you were naturalized. Those are the only two options, right?
Right.
So it's meant to be just a box you check on classification. But in the US, in the West, we use those and attach different meanings underneath them, ballooned underneath them. So other countries don't really do that because and that's why that whole you're African, all this diaspora kind of thing is kind of weird for us. And because there's a barrier, language barrier between all of these countries and African Americans or Americans in general in the diaspora, because how we identify racism, because we understand all the stuff that's underneath it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it in that sense, doesn't it seem the whole expat immigrant thing? Doesn't it make you look at the person who calls himself an expat differently? Like
it does. It does. It makes me look at them with the side eye, and it's like, why do you think? Because I feel like when you're using the term expat, you're coming from a place of privilege, and I feel like this, But I will say, so me and my friend, we had this long discussion. We had this long, drawn out discussion about the difference between an immigrant and an expat. And it's because she's an American immigrating to England. And she does consider herself to be an immigrant. But she's, so when she was in the U.S. Air Force, she spent basically 20 years stationed in Europe, various countries around Europe. And she always thought of herself as an expat. And I was like, I don't think you were an expat. And I didn't think that she was an expat because she was just, doing military service in another country. And so that's what made us start to break down the difference between the terms. And so we actually, we looked up articles online. We looked up definitions online. And the conclusion that we came up with was okay, an expat is someone who moves to a new country, has absolutely no intention of assimilating into that new country. They stay in their own little communities with people who came from wherever they came from, but did not come from the country that they have moved to. They don't learn the language. They don't learn the customs and the culture, and they don't pay any taxes to that country. And all of their income comes from the country that they left. Whereas an immigrant will move to a country, they will assimilate in that country as much as possible. They will pay taxes to that country, and they will go through the steps and do the work to become a citizen of that new country, and they don't plan to leave. And so when I look at an expat now, having broken that down, I'm still looking at the expat with the side eye because I'm like, oh, so you're just going to go to this country and you use their resources and Yeah, and raise their cost of living while lowering your cost of living, but don't want anything to do with the country that you're in.
And you're colonizing. That's colonizing. That's gentrification. That's moving to an area, a country with no plans to even be a part of that culture. Because even if, say, you move there and you say, "Oh, I'm an expat. I don't plan on immersion," but you actually do, because you're going to eat the food there. You're going to recommend restaurants. You're going to date the culture on a long-term basis with no plans of ever marrying the culture. You just want to date it. You want to take all the good stuff out of the culture, all the cultural pieces that really enhance your experience there, because it brought you there for a reason. It wasn't just the cost of living. You know what I'm saying? It's not just that. There's some other appeal that attracted you to that location. So you are, in fact, what you're doing is like those people who move into neighborhoods and then decide that let's use Washington, D.C. as a perfect example. I'm a person from Ohio. I'm going to move to Washington, D.C. I'm going to take advantage of all that Washington, D.C. has to offer. But then I'm going to say, I'm not really a DC person though. I'm not really, I'm not a Washington person. I'm not a DMV citizen. I'm not really that. But you are participating. So that's why that little line between expat and immigrant, according to that definition, bothers me. Because what you're saying is, I'm going to suck everything out of this community that I can and not give anything back.
It's a matter of respect.
And call myself something different so that you can't demoralize me for doing that.
Right. It's a matter of respect. You either have it or you don't. And when you do, when you're in another country and you're not really trying to assimilate into that culture, and you're just using the resources, that's a sign of disrespect. I won't even visit a country without learning as much as I can about that country before I go there, and then trying to assimilate as much as possible while I'm a visitor in that country, So
listen, I don't have you don't want to assimilate? Fine. You want to enjoy the culture and just be there because whatever? Fine. You don't get to not have negative connotations with that thing. Because that's really what it's about. It's really about how you feel about the term. You don't like the term immigrant, so you want to use a different term. It doesn't make you feel bad. Expat sounds more distinguished. It sounds more, it sounds like it's something you would say in a conversation to get people interested in why you're actually there. And it's not going to carry all the negative. But if you actually said, listen, if you actually said, I have no plans of assimilating, I have no plans of immersing myself in the culture. I'm here because it's cheap. I like the food, and I like some parts of the culture, but I have no plans of joining the community or anything. If you said that, people are going to look at you like, so you're a vulture.
Right.
You're a leech.
Right.
You're a succubus. You go in and just suck out all the culture and the enhancements of it and give nothing back to the community. You're going to be held accountable for that. But if you use a pretty little term like expat, oh, okay. All right, wrap up in a little bow. That sounds good.
Yeah, pretty much.
I know people are going to be mad at me for saying that, and I'm not trying to offend any expats or people who use those terms. I'm just saying keep it 100. If that's what you're doing, and not all expats do that. So let me just say that I don't want to blanket, but I'm specifically speaking to those who, according to that definition, have set a hard line of what they're not going to do, right?
Yeah.
If that's your term.
I guess I would ask you to evaluate yourself and really think about why you choose the term expat over immigrant.
Well, some say, I've seen arguments online that expat is not permanent, that an immigrant is permanent.
I agree with that.
So a lot of people are holding, when I tell you they holding on to that, like, I'm not staying long, or I'm only staying for 6 months, or I'm staying for a year or 5 years.
But see, if you're only staying for 6 months or a year, you don't even need a term. Like you don't need a term for that.
You're
like
foreign. You're just foreign.
You're a tourist. You're a visitor. You need an expat term when, like, I don't consider myself to be an expat because I left the U.S. for 9 months. I'm just out traveling. So I don't think that, I think you only need a term when you're living in a country long term, because
you know,
you have to do something in order to do this, whether you establish residency and you prove that you got a certain amount of money in the bank and you don't need medical resources or anything else from this country. But when you're just somewhere for 6 months, you're not doing that. You're staying as long as your visa allows you to stay, and then you're leaving. You don't need a term. You're not an expat and you're not an immigrant. You're a tourist.
but we're talking about people of the Western mindset, and they have to put themselves in little labels so that they can identify themselves when they're talking to other people.
Well,
And they
the
have to
labels
have all their
are-
labels in order. That's going to, in order, so that they, when those instances of defense, because they only use it to defend themselves. I don't go up to people and say, "Hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm a digital nomad living in Colombia." I don't do that. Just say, "Hi, I'm Tiffany. Where are you from?" United States. Like, that's it.
Right. Right.
How long are you here? Oh, just for a while. I don't say I'm an expat.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. That's all social media to me. That's all these terms and how they're used is really just for social media conversations and identification, so people can find you and follow your content.
Yeah.
I'm keeping it 100. Y'all not gonna like me today. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to appeal to those who are looking for a yes girl. I'm not gonna co-sign you. Really, it's about how you feel about yourself and how you feel about the communities that you're joining or you're visiting, and how you understand language and how those terms are used in the West versus the rest of the world.
Right. But it's also funny. Only Americans will be having this conversation right now. Nobody else would care. Nobody, and everybody else will be looking at us like, okay, this is the silliest conversation. None of you belong. You're just there.
And we brown, so let's be real. None of y'all expats. I don't care who you talking to. I don't know what they told you in person, but for real, no brown people are expats. We're all immigrants, no matter where foreigners or immigrants. You might as well just get ready for it. You might introduce yourself as an expat. When you walk away, they say that is an immigrant.
And really, I feel like the term expat, it is a classist term.
Yeah, because if I'm moving over there and I'm paying the same rent that they're paying, the people who live there, and I call myself an expat,
Yeah, it's elitist.
Yeah,
I would agree with that too. You just don't want to be held accountable. That's all. You don't want the negativity that comes with being whatever it is that you are. And it don't have to be negative. You can turn it into something positive. When somebody calls you expat, you can be like, "No, I immigrated here. I'm cool."
Yeah.
great stuff. Good stuff. V, I know you have traveled a lot with just being in the Army. Let's take a segue to places that you have traveled in the Army or currently, because you've been to a lot of places in the last 2 months that I've noticed you on Instagram.
I've been a lot of places in the last 8 months. But it's well, okay. I always say, because people always ask me, "Where have you been?" I'm like, it's always easier to say where I haven't been. But I'll start with October. Since October, I've been to Denmark, Norway, Sweden. Doggone it, what's the country with Helsinki in it? Finland. I've been to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Korea, Japan, and now I'm in England. With the Army, I actually lived in Belgium and I lived in Italy. I was deployed to Bosnia, to Egypt, Cuba, Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. A lot of places.
Oh yes.
And when I lived in Belgium and Italy, I traveled extensively around Europe as well. But that was for leisure mostly, sometimes for work. I went to Romania twice for work. No, yeah, I did go to Romania twice for work, but I also went to Bulgaria for work.
Did you specialize in a certain field?
Yes, I was actually a journalist.
Oh wow, that's
Wow.
dope.
Yeah. Yep. I spent my first 6 years as a photographer and videographer. So as a photographer
Oh,
and videographer, I went to Bosnia. I went to St. Vincent and St. Lucia. While I was in St. Vincent and St. Lucia, I made Say No to Drug commercials. I went to Hawaii. When I was stationed in Hawaii, I did basically, we'll call it forensic photography, because I was doing search and recovery for the Vietnam War and World War II. So I used to go to Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand on a consistent basis.
wow.
Uh, I also have done missions in Germany and Luxembourg and England.
Wow. That is
So
an extensive
you,
list there.
how did you come up with bougie nomad?
Well, I knew it was going to be nomad. Some people suggested gypsy, and I had to educate them on the term gypsy and why I was not going to be using that, which basically is it's a derogatory term.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a negative connotation, and I'm not insulting anybody's community. So I wouldn't use the term gypsy. Nomad is actually more accurate, except for I'm not following, the weather and agriculture. And then bougie, because that's just who I am. I'm a geek. And most nomads, they're gonna stay in hostels. I ain't staying in a hostel. I'm gonna stay in, at least a 3-star hotel, or I'm gonna stay in a really nice Airbnb.
Now,
So that,
when Adrian introduced me to your content, and I started following you pretty faithfully, it had a lot to do with your European pictures, specifically your pictures in Poland during Christmas time, which I really, really enjoyed. They looked like, those old movies that small towns when they decorated for Christmas. I really enjoyed that. And then your train videos, your travel train videos, pictures and videos. I took a train trip, my first train trip in 2021, right after the pandemic. And I really enjoyed my train trip. And then when I went to Europe, I took the train from London to Paris. And
okay.
really enjoyed that train trip. And so it got me more interested in trains and using that as a method of travel from one place to another. So I really enjoyed your train videos.
Yeah, where was your first train trip to?
It was in the US. So it was from Ohio to Philly.
Okay. Yeah, I have never ridden a train no, that's not true. I rode a train in the US one time, but it was a 45-minute ride, so I barely even count that, and I don't even remember it because it was back in like 2004 or 2004, I think. But when I moved to Europe, I learned to ride the trains. I love train travel, especially in Europe.
Me too.
In Europe, it's just, but actually, even in Korea and Japan, it was just next level, and all the different ways you can ride a train. And so I have decided that next year, because I've gone to 2 rail museums since I've been out here. I went to one in Osaka, and I just went to one in York. And I realized I've never been in a sleeper train. So next year, I'm going to take a train from Paris to Istanbul. And that's a 50-hour train ride. But I'm like, sometimes the journey is the destination.
Yeah, the one I took from Ohio to Philadelphia. So I did some stops in DC as well. But I think it was 20-something hours from Ohio to DC. And I didn't do a train car. But, I have friends who've done the one over in the west of US where you go from Portland to California.
Oh, yeah.
And Chicago to Portland to California. So I have friends and family who's done that in a sleeper car. But I really enjoyed and it's only a 2-hour ride from London to Paris, but the train system, just the idea that I could get on a train and be outside the city. And that's where you really get to see, that's where I really fell in love with Europe in that way. because I got to see
Mhm.
the nostalgia. I got to feel the nostalgia around these smaller towns. Um, it's just a different experience outside the main tourist area, right? And me being very
Yes.
interested in immersing myself as a traveler, and not just visiting somewhere, like really just kind of like getting in there and walking amongst the community on a daily basis. I really enjoyed the access I had to other areas in Europe. So, like you, I'm looking
Yes.
forward to a long sleeper car train trip somewhere next year. Absolutely.
Now I'm going to tell you what's next level also, the ferry. So when I traveled from Copenhagen to Oslo, I took the overnight ferry. And when
Hmm.
I traveled from Stockholm to Finland, I took the overnight ferry. And I took a ferry from Korea to Japan as well.
Oh,
The ferry, I also took a ferry from Finland to Estonia, but the ferry is fun. So my first experience on the ferry from Copenhagen to Oslo, that was 19 hours, and I had a cabin with that one had a full size bed in it because I went all out because it was my first time. But I did a wine tasting on the train. They had this really nice buffet dinner on the train because the smorgasbord. I had to do that. But when I took the ferry from I keep saying train, don't I? I mean ferry. But when I took the ferry from Stockholm to Finland, I downgraded my cabin because I was like, all right, I've already balled out on the other ferry, but I balled out in a different way on that one. I went to one of the restaurants. It was a French restaurant, had the 5-course meal complete with with wine pairings for each course,
wow.
and literally went from the restaurant to my cabin because I was like, I am done. I am done. But between the coma and the alcohol, I almost needed somebody to carry me back to my room.
Wow.
That sounds, and so those of you who haven't had these type of experience traveling, this is why one of the reasons why I always encourage you guys to maybe take a longer trip, because it's difficult to do these type of things when you only got 4 or 5 days. 7, 8, 9, 10 days are going to be optimal, especially when you're visiting Europe, to just allow for some of these different kind of experiences, especially for my lady solo travelers. Like, there is just something freeing about having that kind of experience for yourself. Of course, it's great with a partner, so I don't want to discourage that. But doing that if you've got a girlfriend or something, doing a kind of trip like this, where you can fly in somewhere, visit a town, take a ferry to another city or another country, and have another experience within your experiences, or within
Yeah.
your travel experience, really just helps enhance your trip. And it creates these most memorable moments that you'll always remember, because she'll always remember that because that's her first ferry ride, right? She may have 100
Mhm.
ferry rides later in the next year, but that will be the most memorable because she created this moment by having this experience on there.
Yeah. And I
Um,
will tell you, between October and December, I visited 14 different cities and never hopped on a plane once.
wow. How many total countries? You're right at 100, I'm sure. How many countries
No,
are?
no, no, no. Actually, and I only know now because I have the app Ben. So I'm up to 49 countries now.
49. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
49. Because I kept going back to a couple of them over and over
hmm,
again.
okay, okay. Wow.
Can I
But
ask why you started in Europe? Like, why was Europe your starting point?
Because I left Europe too soon. So I had to leave Europe. Well, I lived in Italy, and I left Italy in May 2015, and it was too soon. I didn't get to do all the things that I wanted to do while I was here. And so it started off, the whole nomad thing just kind of happened organically, because it started off that back in 2015, when they made me leave Italy and come back home, I created this list. And it was supposed to be that I was going to live in 12 in 12 months, I was going to live in 12 countries. So it was basically 12 months, 12 countries. And then over time, that evolved to 30 months. No, it evolved to 15 months, 30 countries. And then last March, I learned about Schengen. And I realized, oh, well, you can't do that. So the Schengen agreement, basically, it's a bunch of different countries within Europe who have banded together. And if you go to any of those countries, you cannot be in those countries for more than 90 days in a 6-month time period.
Wow.
And so I had to recreate my entire travel plan. And so I had done everything according to month, and I had fixed everything according to month and geography. Like, one of the reasons that I chose to go to Scandinavia in October was because it was going to be cold, but not too cold, but it also was going to be outside of tourist season, so the prices would come down.
Yeah.
And so I was very meticulous in how I set up this travel schedule. And when it finally came time for me to be able to pull the trigger and take the trip, I did not want to deviate from that plan. Like, I'd already worked out this plan. I'm not deviating from it. So what I had to do was do the 3 months in the countries that I really wanted to do, because I started the trip in October. So it was those 3 countries in October. It was also, so it's basically countries that I didn't get a chance to go to, that I wanted to go to, that I wanted to spend more time in. But it was also a comfort zone. These are places that I'm very familiar with Europe. Like, I can travel around Europe, and I feel comfortable doing this because I've lived here. I know how everything works. Going to Korea was really a stretch for me. I had a friend in Korea, so I stayed with her for the first 2 weeks. And it's so funny to me that it was a stretch. Like, I'm in a country and I don't speak the language, and that's a stretch. Why is that a stretch? You've been in 3 different for 3 months. You've been traveling in countries where you don't speak the language. But I think it was the Hangul alphabet that was throwing me off, because I couldn't just look at the words and figure out what the words were saying.
Yeah.
And so basically, I learned that I can do hard things. Not that I learned, but I had to remind myself that I can do hard things. So yes, I started in Europe because it was a comfort zone, but also I actually really love Europe.
Okay. I like the path you took, and this is gonna kind of take me into safety, because even Tiffany has talked about wanting to talk about that. But I feel like we definitely need to talk about that, because you have a lot of experience, right? But it also goes into some things that I've thought about, and I've talked with other travelers in my groups and stuff. And sometimes people be like, well, if you could live in any of these countries that you've been to, where would you live? And I always say Spain. They were like, and people be like, Spain, but you go to Colombia all the time. And I'm like, if I had to live someplace for its safety, like, Europe is very safe, and I would recommend that to a lot of, especially first-time female travelers. Like, because South America and Latin America, you got to keep your head on the swivel, even as a guy. And I know as a female, you definitely would have to do that as well. So, can you talk about? And was that kind of like your? I know you had like a bucket list because you lived there, but was that kind of the thought that you had? And what are some tips that you would give just any travel, not even just female travelers, just any travel, to be safe?
I mean, I'll be honest, safety is never something that's forefront in my mind. Like, I don't think that I live in an unsafe world. I think that there are things that I have to watch out for, but like, outside of the US, I'm not, for the most part, outside of the US, I'm not going to go to the movie theater and get gunned down in the movie theater. I'm not going to go to those places and just be a victim of a mass shooting. So I don't feel like the world is inherently dangerous. So that's first and foremost. But I also understand common sense and having a little bit of street knowledge. Like, I will admit that between October and February, I wasn't worried for my safety. I wasn't worried about theft. I wasn't worried about anything because I was traveling in countries where they just aren't really doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know, now granted, when I was in Warsaw, because it's a big city, yeah, I'm gonna watch my pockets, you know, because you're gonna be in situations sometimes like at those Christmas markets that are really crowded where you could become a victim of pickpocketing if you're not vigilant. But when I got to London from Japan, I automatically went into, oh shoot, I'm back in the city. Head on the swivel, very vigilant, making sure. I'm not worried about somebody hitting me over the head, ravaging my body and killing me or anything like that in London. I'm worried about somebody stealing my phone and my wallet.
Yeah.
So these are the type of things that you have to be careful of. But it's not like, I don't know, it's not like somebody is, you have to recognize you're in a big city. Yeah. And when you're in a big city, things can happen, you know. But as far as safety, I don't do silly stuff. Like, I'll admit, I could walk down a dark alley in Japan, feel perfectly safe doing that. I'm not walking down a dark alley in London. Okay. You know? Now, I ain't gonna front. I walked down some dark alleys in York. I felt perfectly safe walking down a dark alley in York. But there are other places that I wouldn't necessarily do that because common sense would say, you don't know what's around that corner. So, I mean, you got to know where you are. And also, I feel like I can fight. So you ain't going to just take me. But I also feel like one of my friends had asked me one time, she said, you're not worried about, you know, somebody trying to like sell you into sex slavery. And I had to tell her, chick, I have outgrown, I'm out of that stage. Ain't nobody checking for me. I'm almost 50 years old. I ain't got to put in that work no more.
Okay, so good. Let me just dive a little deeper.
I love you. You good with me, V. That's all I was saying. You good with me. As soon as she said I can fight, I see you.
So let me dive a little deeper into this. So is this more because you have a 20-year Army background? I know a lot of times you are where you're about to be stationed somewhere, you're being briefed. They're giving you certain ins and outs. They're giving you certain tips. Is it more of that mindset, that Army muscle memory, or is it more of just your personality, who V is? Like she's just a fearless person.
That's my personality. Okay. I've jumped out of a plane 28 times.
Okay.
I'm not ever jumping out of a perfectly good plane. I don't know why y'all do that.
Oh yeah, you about that. You about that life.
now look, don't ask me to do it tomorrow. I done put in that work. I ain't got to do that no more.
Right. Good stuff. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know, as far as safety goes, you know, my rule of thumb is you have to understand who you are. You know, I'm more of an anxious traveler, which means I know that the world is not inherently bad. Wink, wink. But I understand that I know that I'm clumsy, for example, and I'm not mindful of like my electronics. So, or because of that, to be safe from, for example, I look up what are the typical scams when I was going to Paris. I'll use Paris as an example. When I was going to Paris, what are the typical scams you might face in Paris? Well, Paris is very well known for their pickpocketing. So I looked up all the ways in which you can be pickpocketed in Paris. On the train, when you arrive at the airport, you know, on the street, what are their techniques? They bump into you. So when I actually got bumped into at the Eiffel Tower, my mind was already on, this could be a possible pickpocket scenario. So let me make sure that my money, my phone, my important documents or whatever I have with me are already secure before I walk out my hotel room. So when I was bumped into and someone did try to pickpocket me, they can get a good cussing instead of a good beat down for actually, you know, for actually getting my wallet, right? So it's just, you have to understand who you are as a traveler. And do a little bit of research. You shouldn't be traveling anywhere. I don't care if you're just going to another town without doing some level of research to kind of understand your surroundings,
Right.
you know, understand the common scams. If you're, you know, you just want to make sure that you are knowledgeable of things, of instances and things that you might need to protect yourself for, according to what you look for. You know, it's according to what kind of traveler you are. If you're more of a daredevil traveler, can do lots of things, and you just, hey, you might not have the same security checks as someone who is more anxious. So just be mindful of that.
And I will say this also as far as tips. I inside pockets on coats, and they're always zipped all the way up. So anything important is on the inside. It's on the inside pocket. Jacket is zipped all the way up. You really gonna have to rip the jacket off of me to get to that inside pocket. Also, I take backpacks everywhere. I'm the backpack chick because my hands always need to be free.
Me too.
I'm never gonna carry one of those totes. I don't understand how people carry totes. They don't even have a zipper on a tote. You know, when I get on the train, that backpack, if that train is crowded, especially in a place like Paris or Rome, that backpack isn't on my back. That backpack is on my front.
Yep.
You know, it's on my chest. And sometimes, like if in the wintertime, I would put the backpack on, put my coat on over top of the backpack, zip the coat up, and then I ain't got to worry about it because I'm on the train and you're not getting to it. Yeah. I also don't put anything on the top of a backpack or on the bottom of the backpack. So like I might put some padding or something that doesn't mean anything on the bottom of the backpack, something else that don't really mean anything on the top of the backpack, but anything of importance, it's going in the middle because you can always cut the bottom of the backpack, you know, but by the time you cut the bottom of the backpack and you get what's going to fall from the bottom, I done already figured out you cut the backpack. If you're in a car, the windows are always up, the doors are always locked. I'm rolled with the AC on. I'm definitely not riding around the streets of Rome in my car with my purse in the passenger seat and the window roll.
You shouldn't be doing that here. Hell, they'll snatch your car while you filling your gas tank up. They'll snatch your purse out the window.
Yeah, but in Rome, they on Vespas, riding up next to your car, reach in the window, grab your purse, and you ain't catching up to them. They gone.
They do that in Colombia
too. Little common sense things like that. Like, don't make yourself a target. Don't be a victim.
Yeah, and for the ladies, you know, you never tell somebody you're traveling solo. You're always meeting a friend, or you know.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I tell you I'm traveling solo.
I don't. And that's some women. You know, some women do, some women don't. But as a rule of thumb, you really don't want to let people know you're traveling solo. And you know, you don't want to go to a restaurant and get shitty drunk at a restaurant. Then you gotta get back. You making it like, don't do things that will make yourself a target. So you know, have drinks in your hotel bar instead. You know, those kind of things. You got to be really, you know, really mindful of whatever you wouldn't do here. Don't do out of the country.
Well, and just think about going to the club in your 20s. The things that you wouldn't do when you went to the club in your 20s. You're not taking a drink from some dude, because I remember I ain't taking no drinks from the dude in the club.
Me neither.
You're not leaving your drink unattended and then coming back and drinking from that drink. So my drink limit when I'm out in public is usually 2 glasses of wine. That's the most that I would do in public. And even then, I've already figured out how I'm going to get home. So worst case scenario, I will take a taxi in a heartbeat. Like, I'm not going to be on public transit by myself feeling faded.
Yeah. I mean, and as far as the dark alleys, I mean, I walked a dark alley in London, but I also walk like I'm, you know, when I'm in that scenario, I did it in Cuba too. I got lost, and it was a dark alley. I just walk like I know where I'm going, and I will mess you up if you try to approach me. So if you walk like you scared, you almost again, you're inviting someone to come up to you. But if you walk like, listen, y'all seen The Color Purple? You see how Sophia was walking up. That's how I walk.
Yep, you told Harpo to beat me. Yep,
yes,
that's how
I'm walking just like that, with power and authority, and maybe a little bit of a fist, just so you know. I can fight. Even if I can't fight, you gonna know I can fight. You gonna think I can fight.
I'm not going down without a fight. We gonna say that. Even if I can't beat you, it ain't gonna be easy. I ain't going down without a fight.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, V, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm almost finished. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, okay. All right, thank you. All right, yeah.
That's
Quite
that's a good segue, right? I was just about to say that about to wrap it up because I did promise you to an hour of your time, and I know it's late over there in the UK. We'd like to put you on the hot seat, ask you a few questions, and see what your response are. But so first, what's your favorite city of all time to visit? Or actually, I should give you top three because you've been to a lot. Give me top three.
Okay, I always like to say Dublin.
I've heard it a lot of times.
I've only been to Dublin once, but I just loved it.
Okay.
Rome, love Rome.
Love Rome.
Any place where there's history,
Okay.
any place where there's history. That's yes, ancient history too. Like I don't understand how you can just live with the Colosseum in your backyard and just not be mesmerized every day.
Right.
Third one. I'll say Mallorca, Spain. And I'm saying Mallorca and I'm saying Dublin mainly because of the experiences that I had there. Mallorca is where like I had lost myself for a while and I found myself again in Mallorca. And Dublin is where I learned that if you learn everything that you can about a place before you go there, then you can experience that place in real time, as opposed to trying to figure it out once you get there, like knowing the history and then going to the sites. I had a whole different experience because of that.
Interesting. Second question, favorite food. Give me top three, I guess, it'd be various countries. Top three foods that you got to have this when I touch down in this city or country.
Well, okay, we'll say, I don't care what country it is. I'm gonna find me the Indian restaurant.
Like, you are my girl. I love Indian food. That is like my number one.
Yep, doesn't matter where I am. I'm gonna find the Indian restaurant. The second one
is ramen. What are you gonna get? Biryani?
No. I'm getting the vindaloo. I'm getting lamb or goat. I'm getting the vindaloo or I'm getting the curry.
Okay. Yeah. A little naan on the side.
Gotta have my garlic naan.
What are you gonna have me go get some naan today? Okay, 2 and 3.
Ramen. I'm obsessed with Japanese ramen.
What?
I was in Japan for a month, and I swear I probably ate ramen every other day and couldn't get.
Gonna be me. That's gonna be me. I can't wait to go to Japan for ramen. Literally, and then I watch. I'm not really big into celebrities when they travel because they got a whole different experience than we do. But when I saw Megan Thee Stallion eating everything, I said that is what I'm talking about. When you're supposed to eat the weird stuff, you're supposed to try everything. That is definitely me. I don't care. I'm like, what we about to do? Because I'm about to go eat again. They're like, again? Yes. Yes, I'm going again. Yes.
Yep.
I'm going again. I'm going to eat again.
Yep.
Yeah. It's been 2 hours. I want to go to this next spot.
Right.
And what's like 5,000 calories a day. I don't care.
Number 3, it might be real basic, but I'm just gonna say Italian.
Italian, okay.
Yeah, I love bolognese. And I can get bolognese with a glass of Italian wine. I'm good.
Yes. Tiff, you got any hot questions?
Yeah. So social life. You're nomadic. So you're here one place and gone the next. What's the tea on the social life?
Look, everybody's my best friend for about 30 minutes to an hour. I got new best friends all over the world. 30 minutes to an hour. You got 30 minutes to an hour. You learn your whole story in that time period, and then you start all over again with the next person. I'm not even concerned about dating. I don't date. I'm not concerned about dating. It's not even something that's on my radar. I'm too worried about somebody coming in and disturbing my peace.
Ooh, hey man,
I,
V,
I'm like,
what's your sign?
I'm a Leo.
Oh,
I can
I'm a
see that. I can see
yeah,
that.
I can see it too.
You know, and I could see, like, I don't know. I feel like God gives you what you need. And if he thought I needed a husband, he would have gave me one by now.
Right.
And
Right.
and I'm not dead, so he still might give me one.
Your husband is travel. That's what who loved you and you love it.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Them nomads be, that's real attractive to European men. So I'm just saying, they be like, that's a real travel woman is very attractive. Somebody gonna sneak up on you, V. I'm sorry.
Maybe.
Somebody might sneak up on you.
Look, he need to sneak up on me in Ireland then.
Hey, y'all talking about these y'all talking about these. You know what? Last and final question, because I did want to hit on this, and I just totally forgot. Because most people, especially people of color, like, because I got a few friends that be like, "Nah, I ain't doing no Europe. I ain't doing no Europe." How are Black people treated in Europe?
I'll be honest with you. I can't say how Black people are treated. I can tell you how I'm treated.
Okay.
Because I'm a solo traveler. And I do have friends, Black friends in Europe, and ain't nobody complaining to me about how they've been treated. I mean, I did have one person she did get into a fight with a dude on a bus in Spain. I wasn't there. The dude did not win the fight. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
But she felt like he felt comfortable fighting her because she was a Black woman. But me personally, I've never had an issue. I mean, I got to London carrying a whole bunch of luggage up subway steps, and nobody was willing to let me carry that luggage up them steps. Yesterday I was traveling carrying luggage, and this lady made her daughter carry my bags for me. So I mean, I've been walking around here all day today. Every time somebody sees me, they smile, they say hello. So I mean, I don't know. I can say that Vashana is treated well.
Okay. Yeah, I always say, it's nothing like your own perspective, your own experience. So, because I hear that about what's the place, France? Like, oh, they treat Black people. I always hear that in France. That Black people. I'll never go back to France or whatever. So,
I didn't have any bad experience when I was there either.
Say that one more time. Both of y'all was talking.
I said I've been to France several times and I've never been treated bad. But I do have I just met someone, and now I will say this. A lot of times people tell me that when I travel to places, like I went to Montreal, and Montreal is known to be very racist. And I said, I didn't have any problems. And they always say that's because you're American.
Yeah.
I've been to Montreal too, and I didn't have a bad problem.
I would concur, and I've actually heard that when that I've been with someone else and they had a different experience than I did because I was American.
Right.
And so it wasn't necessarily a race thing; it was an American versus African thing. Especially Africans experience a lot of instances where they feel they've been targeted or
especially before I moved to Italy, I was warned that if anybody approaches me in a negative manner, just start speaking, and once they realize that I'm American, they'll leave me alone. And I did get pulled over by the police once, and the second they realized I was American, they sent me on my way.
I always say I'm so proud of being American, not in America. Because I will yell at the top of my life, I'm American. Estados Unidos, Americano, in all languages. I will tell you I'm American.
That's because he looked like he not. That's how because he looked like he can fit in most of these other places.
I look like I'm African. I get it.
Yeah.
But, yes. So thank you. We appreciate you for coming. The studio audience appreciates you as well too. I thought so.
They're tired. They're tired.
Yes. But yes, this is so good. A lot of things that have come out that I didn't even know, and I thought I knew a good bit pre-gaming and on Instagram as well. So we definitely need to have you back if you would like to come back and check us out again. We enjoyed this conversation here.
Absolutely.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
Yes. You have her Instagram here, which she has, like I said, I spotted it. I said, this lady got an eye for photography, man. Like, and you didn't tell me that's what you did for years on years.
Yeah.
So definitely check her out. She has a lot of great content on her Instagram. And it's right here, Bougie Nomad. So check her out. Tell her you saw her on Matic Mondays, and that's about it.
Is Instagram the only platform, or are you on YouTube or TikTok or?
No, just Instagram. I'm too lazy for YouTube.
Oh yes, it's a labor. It's a child of labor.
Look, doing a reel on Instagram is a whole lot of work for me.
Yeah.
Imagine doing 6-7 minutes worth of content, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Yes, I got some work I need to push out right now, and I'm dreading it because I'm not in a creative mode right now for some reason. But yeah, so thank you again. We will talk. You will not be a stranger to us, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna hold you to it.
Yes, and I would like to leave on this note. It was something you said in your conversation with us. Sometimes the journey is the destination. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take that with me. And with that, we are gone. Take care, y'all. All right. Thanks, B. All right, Tim. I'll let you.
Bye.
Bye.
BS3 Network, changing the way you watch TV.